With over 6.2 million adults in the United States diagnosed with heart failure each year, the need for cardiac intervention devices is clear. Total heart replacements bridge the gap between life and death for patients in severe stages of heart failure waiting to receive a transplant. While only 2,000 donor hearts are available per year, artificial hearts provide a hopeful future that heart failure does not have to compromise one's quality of life. Our group will explicitly cover the AbioCor artificial heart developed by AbioMed and dive further into the market demand, projections, and predictions as we continue to innovate medical devices.
The heart in a normal adult with normal cardiac output can pump over 7,000 liters of blood per day. When the heart pumps blood through the arteries, the blood carries oxygen, nutrients, and hormones throughout the body and brings back waste such as carbon dioxide to be excreted. When the heart beats, a pressure is created across the arteries. Over 100,000 patients at this time are awaiting an organ transplant, and some have to wait over 5 years for a transplant, with each passing year increasing the probability of a medical emergency. As you can see in this image, blood flow through the arteries away from the heart carries oxygen throughout the body, which is demonstrated by the red color on the right. Deoxygenated blood is carried through the veins and back to the heart, which is demonstrated by the blue color on the left. In the middle image, deoxygenated blood flows through the veins and into the vena cava and goes to the right atrium, into the right ventricle, and up through the pulmonary arteries and into the lungs. Once the blood is oxygenated in the lungs, it returns into the pulmonary veins and flows to the left atrium, into the left ventricle, to the aorta, and from there, back into the body.
The development of cardiac replacement devices begins in 1953, where a heart-lung machine was designed by Dr. John Gibbon and was used in a successful open-heart surgery, demonstrating that an artificial device can temporarily mimic the functions of a real heart. In 1964, the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute sets a goal of designing a total artificial heart by 1970. In 1966, Dr. Michael DeBakey of Houston successfully implanted a partial artificial heart in a patient. And in 1967, Dr. Christian Bernard performs the first successful human heart transplant. The patient, 53-year-old dentist Louis Wachowski, dies 18 days after his surgery in South Africa. In 1969, a total artificial heart is implemented in a patient by Dr. Denton Cooley of the Texas Heart Institute. The patient gets a heart transplant 3 days later, but then dies a day and a half later. In 1982 through 1985, Dr. William DeVries carries out a series of 5 implants of the Jarvik total artificial heart. The first patient survived for 112 days. Only 4 others received the Jarvik as a permanent replacement heart. Another patient lived 620 days and died in 1986 at age 54. Other patients received the Jarvik as a temporary device while awaiting heart transplants. In 1994, the Food and Drug Administration approved the left ventricular assist device, which helps failing hearts continue to function. In 2000, a man in Israel became the first recipient of the Jarvik 2000, the first total artificial heart that can maintain blood flow in addition to generating a pulse. And finally, in 2001, doctors at a hospital in Louisville, Kentucky, implant the first self-contained mechanical heart replacement in a patient. The device was called AbioCor, and is battery-powered and the size of a softball. AbioMed is headquartered in Danvers, Massachusetts. However, they have numerous branches in Woburn, Baltimore, Berlin, Aachen, and Tokyo. Additionally, AbioMed employs about 2,400 people across the world, mostly concentrated in North America, Europe, and Asia, and the average starting salary at the company is about $107,000. AbioMed leads the world in providing medical technology regarding circulation and oxygenation support, with approximately 2,200 patents, most of which are still active. And since its founding in 1981, AbioMed has shifted its focus to native heart recovery, and in the last 5 years they've invested over $850 million in clinical research. The AbioCor began development around the 1990s, eventually making headway with animal testing in 1998, which was in preparation for human trials. The device underwent further testing until 2001, when the Food and Drug Administration granted investigational device exemption to AbioMed, paving the road for human trials with moderate success. The device was primarily implemented in patients with severe heart failure, including failures of both ventricles. Therefore, these patients were often waiting for transplantation. The development of AbioCor slowed following insufficient data to continue development until the announcement of a second version, AbioCor 2, which was smaller and more versatile. However, it did never develop into human trials. The device was eventually removed from the website in 2016, and the project was silently abandoned. However, recently, the Impella ventricular support system is a new product that is being actively developed. The AbioCor featured a fully implantable electrohydraulic artificial heart that runs transcutaneous energy transmission, or TET, with no wire attachment required. It was created as a replacement for terminal heart failure. The device is fully rechargeable and contains a 2-chamber hydraulic pump to maintain circulation of blood, with the ability to pump over 2.5 gallons per minute. It is primarily composed of titanium for the systemic and pulmonary pumping chambers and polyurethane for blood contacting surfaces, and it functions well in the human body since it is extremely corrosion resistant and durable. The polyurethane is blood-safe plastic that has great antithrombotic properties, which make a great material choice for a surface which sees frequent blood flow.
Currently, the artificial heart is not a standalone therapy. Instead, it's used to prolong a patient's life and increase the quality of life until a donor is found. It acts as a temporary replacement to ensure that no major cardiac events happen due to cardiac disease. The figure at the right shows the mortality trends in U.S. males and females suffering from cardiovascular disease from 1968 to 2016. And this decline we see is likely due to the intervention of better therapies and better devices that have been developed, and will continue to see this decline as we get closer and closer to a heart that will one day support an active lifestyle and maintain the function of the heart. As previously emphasized, heart disease is the #1 cause of death in the United States. And this is severely concerning because after certain cardiac events, life expectancy can significantly decrease, which is exactly what we observe in charts A and B, where B shows the normal life expectancy for certain populations from 65 to 90, and then in A where we see this almost cut in half after a myocardial infarction. And this is largely due to the fact that after a single cardiac event, your chances of a major cardiac event happening are significantly increased. With only 2,000 donor hearts available each year, the need for total artificial hearts and cardiovascular intervention devices in general is on the exponential rise. We also see a trend towards elderly populations tending towards a more active lifestyle, so the want and the need for better heart functioning is going to rise and create this demand for more and more improvements in our cardiac devices, and especially the total artificial hearts, which address heart failure patients. So on the topic of market demand, the market projections have actually been influenced by both the COVID-19 pandemic and the Russian-Ukraine war. So currently, the artificial heart market sits at around 23 million as of 2022, and this is projected to grow to 56 million by 2028, with a compound annual growth rate of 16%. This is because of the rise in the number of instances of cardiac disorder in general, the increase in the geriatric population, and improper lifestyle. So far, we've been discussing AbioMed, but there are other companies out there that make total artificial hearts, some of these being Surtech, Jarvik, AbioCor, Thoratec, Carmat, Syncardia, Abbott, as well as many others. And on the next slide, we're going to have a side-by-side comparison of the Jarvik, the Syncardia, and the AbioMed hearts. The first heart we're looking at is the Jarvik 7, which was first implanted in 1982. Some of the features of this total artificial heart were skin entry ports, air power tubes, pumps that were connected to a device console, which was actually the size of a washing machine, and ventricles that were connected to an external pneumatic machine. The second heart is the Cardio West by Syncardia, which was essentially the Jarvik 7 but with smaller diameter air power tubes and an up-to-date laptop computer console. Some of the features of this one were Freedom Portable Driver and pumps connected to a monitoring device console in the hospital. This received FDA approval in 2004, which made it the first FDA-approved total artificial heart. And finally, the third heart we're going to look at is our AbioCor AbioMed, and some of the features of this total artificial heart are the wireless energy transfer system, the internal rechargeable battery, the internal controller, and the external wireless driver, and this received FDA approval in 2006.
The CARMAT total artificial heart had better results in their trials than the AbioCor total artificial heart did. In the CARMAT total artificial heart transplant, a patient was able to survive 75 days after the surgery after the heart had been implanted. The CARMAT total artificial heart transplant uses electrohydraulic pumps to create both a systolic and diastolic pressure. The AbioCor total artificial heart was the first implant that had an implanted battery that did not need to be hooked up to wires. This, however, is still under development due to clinical trials involving 14 patients that had catastrophic results. The trials had 2 patients die during the surgery and 18 total strokes afterwards. The biocompatibility of these materials needed to be updated, and currently the product is not on the market.
The future of artificial hearts is really exciting because we're seeing a lot of new ideas that are addressing the problems of previous generations of artificial hearts. Some of these are electromagnetic induction, which is replacing the typical centrifugal pumps and hydraulic pumps, and this is reducing friction, and friction often leads to material failure or destroying red blood cells. Another development is in regenerative medicine, where we're seeing the implementation of animal extracellular matrices, and this is really helpful for reducing organ failure and organ rejection, because essentially what they're doing is taking a cow heart or a pig heart, draining it of all biological elements of the cow or the pig, and injecting it with human stem cells or human cardiac cells. Finally, sensor development is helping with updating and monitoring the success of a device, and if we're able to implement these sensors, it's going to remove the surgical intervention of fixing any malfunctions or creating any updates within the device.
Some innovations that need to be implemented into the total artificial heart before it can work within patients is to be able to decrease the size of the artificial heart itself so it can better fit a wider range of patients. What they have found is the original model of the artificial heart is too big and doesn't fit the vast majority of patients. Better biocompatibility is needed in order to avoid catastrophic results such as hemorrhage or thrombolytic results. Also, the materials need to be better suited so they decrease the risk of infections after the surgery. The areas that need improvement are decreasing the size of the artificial heart implant due to the larger size only fitting larger males. A smaller size is needed to fit a larger part of the population. Different materials may need to be updated to help decrease the risk of infection after the surgery or mechanical failure of the implant itself. Along with this, clinical trials have shown that hemorrhage and blood clots have caused catastrophic results, and this needs addressed so patients are not at risk for these in the future with this implant.